Hello and welcome. We are now in the final phase of our election series, the Dhabas of Democracy. The D-Day is almost here. And I'm very pleased to share with our audience, many of you have been following our journey since we began our road trip in Kanyakumari, that we have reached the end of our journey in Kashmir. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. The images that you see are of our team having reached Srinagar and, of course, the areas in the north and the south that we've also reported from. This is a journey that took us 42 days. In this road trip, we covered 12 states, but we also covered 12,000 kilometers. All of this was done by road, and it gave us a unique perspective, a unique understanding of what's happening on the ground. Kanyakumari to Kashmir by road has given us a chance to give the mic in the hands of you, the people. We have always believed in placing people first. And talking about Kashmir, it's been an extraordinary moment. Kashmir has broken all records with its turnout, and you can watch my ground reports from Kashmir on our platform. But now, of course, we are getting into the final mile of this race. The Election Commission also, intriguingly, after telling the Supreme Court that it wasn't going to do so, has published all of the data and the numbers of the phases that have voted till now. In fact, for 5 phases, we have very detailed constituency-wise data from the Election Commission. And the process of studying this data has begun. Once again, theories are being built around turnout. In particular, the focus is on 4 or 5 states, the states of Uttar Pradesh, the states of Maharashtra, Bihar, Gujarat, and Rajasthan. These are 5 states where in constituencies, more constituencies compared to 2019, there has been voting that has taken place under 60%, or in some cases even under 55%. How should we read this? Has this election turned? For the last few phases, we have seen this debate, and at this point, there are 2 clear narratives. One narrative that belongs to, let's say, the Yogendra Yadav school of thought. You've seen his interview on our platform that says the BJP will fall below majority. The other that belongs to political strategist turned politician Prashant Kishor that says the BJP will come back, but Grand Modi will be weakened. To make sense of all the differing perspectives and the noise, and bring some order into the conversation, we turn today to the foremost expert, Yashwant Deshmukh. Yashwant, of course, is somebody you've seen quite often on our platform. Let's welcome him back as our newsmaker on this broadcast to try and make sense of the competing narratives. It's always good to have you, Yashwant, and I'm glad to have completed my journey from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, learned a lot, but will never try and hazard the outcome, the mind of a voter. The Indian voter is too wise, and I leave that to experts like you. So, shuru karte hain. 2 competing narratives, almost as if 2 different elections have taken place. One can understand that both sides want to believe, need to believe the election isn't over. There's still one more phase to go, that they're in the game, they're in with a chance. But if you had to look after 6 phases at who's ahead, who's behind, how to make sense of 2 competing narratives, one that argues the election is turned, the other that argues that it's still for the BJP to win and repeat. Where do you stand between these 2 contesting narratives, Yashwant?
First of all, congratulations for this entire journey, Barkha. What lovely visuals. I mean, as you are saying something, I'm just going through all the visuals that you have been covering. It's beautiful. And you know, or many in the viewers might not know this, but the first ever survey in Kashmir was done by me. That was way back in, first ever survey. That was the cover issue of the Week magazine, way back in the early 90s.
I remember that now. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes.
at that point of time, I had actually traveled myself on a YesD because taking the car was absolutely said a no by my UNI bureau chief over there. He said that no, take my YesD, and he gave me his local reporter. And I drove right up to the Anantnag, Baramulla, and everywhere. I drove that YesD myself. And what lovely memories since then, you know. And I must say, for this election, all the headlines are one side, and the turnout in Kashmir is one thing for me. I mean,
I was just going to say, before we get into the numbers, let's take a moment. You know, I've covered this state when 5 baje sanata ho jata tha, boycott calls hoti thi, and Kashmir, more people have voted in Baramulla turnout percentage wise than in Delhi or Mumbai.
Exactly. So in my first survey, I remember in the mid 90s, almost 82% in the valley said that they fear that the polls will be rigged. You know, so the turnout was dropped. So that basically that, you know, there is no point because the polls will be rigged. From that day, to this day of the record turnout in the Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, and particularly in the Kashmir Valley. Remarkable. I mean, or if not anything else, I celebrate this election just because of that particular.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. So let's have that moment of celebration. And now let's take a look at the big picture. Go ahead. Yes.
So, Barkha, last time we spoke, we were looking at the turnout, drop in the turnout, and we discussed about why it is being over discussed because of the 2004 ghost and the 2004 drop in the metropolitan and urban turnout, 18 points where the BJP lost, and so on and so forth. But since then, we also watched slow and steady with each round going up and up. The turnout has been going up. The drop of the turnout was no more to be seen by the time we reached fourth phase of election. And since then, I've been now, going to and fro about what the observations I made earlier and what I made. I'm now feel more knowledgeable with the turnout figures that are completely given by the EC. So first things first, my first observation at that point of time was that wherever the contest is good, turnout is good. And wherever the turnout is perceived as lopsided, the turnout has gone down. And Barkha, at that point of time, I said that Maharashtra happens to be the only basket case defying this trend. But I'm happy to report to you, no, it's not defining. It's actually sticking very much to that hypothesis of mine that the turnout is contesting and good, because the final turnout of Maharashtra in totality has been way better than what our apprehensions were after the first round of polling. And I did a thorough analysis, Barkha, of the 48 seats turnout of Maharashtra. So here is what I did. I mean, after going to the overall data and everything, I realized there are 6 different kind of elections that are going on in Maharashtra. Not in terms of regions, not in terms of the 5 regions of Maharashtra. There are 6 blocks of seats in Maharashtra. First block is the traditional BJP versus Congress block. Second block was the BJP versus NCP block. Third block was the internal fighting block of Shiv Senas, the Nakli Asli Shiv Sena ki ladai. The fourth block was the other way around. That means the new factions were contesting the BJP. And the fifth major block was NCP ki ghar ki ladai, Chacha Bhatije ki. Asli Nakli NCP ki ladai. So the funny thing is, the turnout dropped in the 5th and 6th one maximum. मतलब चाचा भतीजे की लड़ाई में किसी को इंटरेस्ट नहीं था. It seems यार तुम लोग लड़ो, हम घर बैठते हैं. So the turnout dropped maximum in the चाचा भतीजा की लड़ाई. Turnout jumped up big time between the Congress and the BJP लड़ाई. There was an increase in turnout in Maharashtra in all those seats where it was a Congress versus BJP. And the turnout not only remained the same, but marginally increased in the seats where Asli Nakli Shiv Sena ki ladai. So basically, 2 major blocks where the turnout went up was keen contest of Congress versus BJP and keen contest of the 2 Shiv Senas, Asli Nakli. The other 2 blocks remained more or less okay, and there was a massive drop of turnout in Chacha Bhatija ki ladai or Asli Nakli ki ladai of the NCP. So that's how I look at it. The hypothesis stands. If the contest was good, turnout went up. If the contest was perceived as lopsided, the turnout went down, or if the people were indifferent to that. Even in Maharashtra, the hypothesis now holds true.
But can I ask you a question? The Economic Times, from which we've picked up some data, once the Election Commission put out very detailed constituency-wise data, they started looking at seats where there has been less than 60% turnout, right? And Uttar Pradesh, look at these. These are the main states where there was some change that was reflected. So Maharashtra kind of tied between 2019 and 2024, so proving your hypothesis. But UP में, there were 38 seats this time where the turnout is below 60%. This is after 5 phases, I should qualify. Compared to 24 in 2019. Rajasthan में भी मुझे थोड़ा significant लगा, 12 where the turnout is below 60% this time compared to 3. Does this strike you as significant? And of course, overall, the ET found that in 51 seats, there was less than 55% turnout compared to about 30 in 2019. So what do you make of this very granular data?
Yeah, so two observations very quickly on that. First of all, instead of looking at the turnout figures of 60 or less than 60, the turnout has to be mapped what that particular seat polled last time and this time, because every seat has a different turnout in that way. So any seat which has reported more turnout than the last time is more significant than whether that seat reported more than 60 or not. But even in this data, I can tell you one very classical thing. In UP and in Rajasthan, two places where you quoted, particularly in Rajasthan, you will be finding it very amusing that almost like 20 seats of Rajasthan, which were considered as lopsided or which were considered as a given that BJP ka lead bahut zyada yahan rehta hai, the turnout has dropped. But in the 5 seats where the contest was really close, the turnout maintained and went up. In a seat like Barmer, which was highly contested, the turnout significantly went up than the state average. So the 5 seats where the contest was good, the state average se kahin zyada turnout wahan hua. Same is the case of Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh, almost about so far, about 20 odd seats are there where the turnout is way better than the state average, and all those seats are very nicely contested. And the seats which were BJP were having a kind of a really big time lead, not just in the 2 Lok Sabha elections, but also in the Lok Sabha lead of the last 2 assembly elections also. That is where the turnout has dropped. So basically within the states, these seats where the turnout has gone up, they present a different kind of a picture that, okay, these seats are where the turnout is good, and and where we should be very, very keen on observing on the counting day what exactly are the trends coming from those particular seats.
So in a way, your basic hypothesis or your argument is, जहां टक्कर की लड़ाई है वहां टर्नआउट अच्छा होगा, जहां लोग बोर्ड है लाइक इन चाचा भतीजा, टर्नआउट विल बी लो.
अच्छा देखो, जैसे यही तुम्हारा टर्नआउट 50% से भी नीचे वाला जो टर्नआउट बताया है ना
जी, 55 वाला, can we go back to that slide?
Can you go back to it? Yeah. So now that number has increased from 30 to 51. You know which 51 seats are there? These 51 seats are those seats particularly where either the opposition has won consequently for 2 or 3 elections non-stop in a row, or the BJP has been winning non-stop in a row by a huge margin. So these seats, 51 seats, include the seats of Kerala, include the seats of Tamil Nadu, where a drop in turnout doesn't mean that BJP is winning those seats. It simply means even the opposition people are realizing ye to jeetna hi jeetna hai na, why to go out and magan maro in that way. So
right.
So this entire block is kind of affirmative of sort on how many seats we can say that, okay, these are like in US we used to say, we say blue seats and red seats and blue states and red states, very less number of purple states. Exactly what is happening over here. The number of purple states has actually gone down to 5 in India, and number of seats which are purple seats in that way, going around various places. I don't think outside those 5 states, the number of purple seats are more than 25 in all.
Very interesting. Now, your running hypothesis through this election campaign has been that the 2 states that are going to be the mother of all battles are Maharashtra and Bengal. We have spoken about Maharashtra right now. The Prime Minister, in an interview to ANI, has spoken about Bengal. And I'm going to play out that clip for you because, very interestingly, he is arguing that Bengal is going to be the BJP's best performance, obviously relative, but he believes that Bengal is going to bring in that spectacular headline for the BJP. Take a look and we'll come right back.
इस बार पूरे हिंदुस्तान में द बेस्ट परफॉर्मिंग स्टेट कोई होगा तो पश्चिम बंगाल होने वाला है. भारतीय जनता पार्टी को सर्वाधिक सफलता पश्चिम बंगाल में मिल रही है और पश्चिम बंगाल का चुनाव एक तरफा है.
So this is interesting, and of course it could be you could read it as a political statement, you could read it as a standalone statement. How do you read it?
I take that very seriously when he says that, because I understand many things politicians and even he himself have been saying for Chartopath, which I have always maintained that it's more like a psychological warfare rather than the actual target. But Bengal is something different. I was going through the reports of Indian Express the other day. and where the reporters have reported the anti-incumbency in Bengal is right now working against Mamata. There is anger and anti-incumbency, but it is actually, they are treating it more like a state subject state in that way rather than a national thing. And because an alternative is there in that way, national way, so many of them. So what is happening in Bengal in our tracker also, Barkha, we did point out this one, that Bengal is a very unusual state. It is the only state in India where BJP actually entered the rural side, countryside, and then expanded to the urban areas. In all other states of India, BJP was a Shahar ki party, urban party, and then it spread out to the rural countryside. So Bengal is where they entered rural, but the Bhadralok of Bengal remained steadfast with Mamata because she was the core of the Bengali urban consciousness, whatever you can say. Now, things in tracker that we realize that there is a weird migration pattern that is going on. BJP is entering the Bhadralok and Mamata is reclaiming the rural. So there is a kind of a transition which is going on. That is why all of the Bengal seats are now look like battleground. While earlier, out of 42, I would have said that Barkha, about 15 seats here and 10 seats here, 25 seats are like kind of pre-decided. And the remaining in the middle are the battleground state. Right now in West Bengal, I will tell you, Barkha, that actually almost 38 seats in Bengal in a way are battleground. Only 4 seats I can say that, okay, it's kind of pre-decided. I will not take the names right now, but it's like kind of pre-decided. Isme kuch hone wala nahi. But 38 seats in West Bengal are right now in real good contest. And when I say real good contest, you have to actually be very, very observant that day, because with every round of counting, you are likely to see the change in, the tallies or the leads this way or that way in those 38 seats in West Bengal.
And it actually furthers your theory that where there is fierce competition, there is high turnout. Bengal has seen handsome turnout.
Absolutely. I mean, and no, it doesn't tell us who is going to win. I'm telling honestly, the drop in the turnout or the increase of the turnout doesn't necessarily tell us it is anti-incumbent, pro-incumbent. No, none of those inferences can be taken. But yes, what we can understand, how the public looks at those contests, whether they are realizing, yeah, ek tarfa hai, whether they are realizing, no, it is a good fight and we should go out, it matters. My vote matters. In the states or seats which are conceived one-sided, perceived one-sided, I think the overall inclination to go out, something creeps in, Barkha, that my vote is not that important. कि मेरे जाने से कोई असर पड़ेगा, मैं हार रहा हूं तो असर नहीं पड़ रहा है, मैं जीत रहा हूं तो भी असर नहीं पड़ रहा है, नहीं भी गया तो क्या फर्क. That sentiment creeps.
Okay, now let's zoom out. We've taken a look at turnout. We've looked at Bengal and Maharashtra as those ferocious battleground states. There are two distinct narratives even after 6 phases of this election. Usually 6 phase ke baad you kind of believe कि यार ये election ऐसी है या ये election ऐसी है. And it's not that these are the only 2 individuals who have made these arguments, but they have come to be faces of these arguments. There is Yogendra Yadav on the one side, who says कि majority से कम BJP आ रही है और NDA भी possibly can fall below majority. दूसरी तरफ है प्रशांत किशोर, हमारे इंटरव्यू से शुरुआत हुई, उसके बाद बहुत सारे इंटरव्यूज हुए, वो कहते हैं बीजेपी वापस आ रही है, बेहतरीन परफॉर्मेंस भी हो सकती है, बट स्टेटस को तो है पक्का, बट मिस्टर मोदीज ब्रांड, he argues, is in decline. Opposition की feeling है कि वो वापस आ रही है. These are 2 completely divergent narratives. Yashwant.
So I lost the last line of yours. You said that these are the completely divergent things.
I said these are 2 completely divergent narratives. How do you look at them? How do you look at them?
So honestly speaking, both these gentlemen are obviously not talking about empirical data because they don't carry the burden of being Yashwant Deshmukh or Sanjay Kumar or Pradeep, because we know the data and we cannot quote it because of election commission. But yeah, as a politician, I say that, okay, one is telling you the worst case scenario, one is telling you the best case scenario. So now, the best and the worst case scenarios, what we can say is that, let's say let's become the devil's advocate and see the other way around. Okay, if I play a devil's advocate that okay, Yogenji is right, even his worst case scenario, let's take it on the face value. Does he comfortably say that his worst case scenario is also making NDA almost reaching majority? You know, it's like कि हम बीजेपी तो नहीं पा रही है मेजोरिटी और एनडीए को भी हम कोशिश करके हम बस रोक ही लेंगे. सो अगर वो उनका अपना खुद का बेस्ट केस सिनेरियो अगर यही पहुंच रहा है कि एनडीए बीजेपी इज नॉट गेटिंग मेजोरिटी एंड एनडीए को हम रोक लेंगे, then obviously the odds are very clear in that way, even from the perspective of योगेन जी. अब अगर योगेन जी को मैं वो अपने राजस्थान के डोला बाजार के वो सट्टा बाजार वाला जो आता रहता है बीच बीच में, इफ आई पुट इन देयर योगेन जी अपना पैसा लगाओ, then I would be very happy to see फलौदी में कि योगेन जी पैसा लगाइए कहाँ पे, अपनी ही बात पे बोलूंगा कि लगा दो, तो योगेन जी 100 रुपए कहाँ लगा के आएंगे. That would be a question which hypothetically I should be asking Yogenji in good humor, but that's how it is. Now coming down to what Prashant Kishor said. Prashant Kishor ji again is the politician for all practical matters. Yeah, I mean, he has taken the best case scenario, in that way. I did not listen to that full interview because नहीं देख पाया उस चीज को, लेकिन जितना मैंने पढ़ा या उस तरीके से, so he has taken a contrasting position from Yogendra Yadav in that way. The truth lies somewhere in between, So I say, if you want to see the empirical evidence with the truth, then pick up the issue of India Today on 26 January का जो हमारा MOTN था. Somewhere, I mean, going by these two extremes, I would consider the truth is somewhere in between there with the empirical evidence. But even the best case scenario of Yogenji and the worst case scenario of BJP in that matter, are something like BJP below 272 mark and NDA touching a majority. That's what I read from the best case scenario of Yogendra Yadav and the worst case scenario of Prashant Kishor is considered. But obviously, they have to be taken. All those assessments have to be taken with a lot of not just pinch but a lot of salt, and we shall wait for the first, when the empirical evidence of the numbers, at least in vote share and everything, comes out, and then we shall wait on the fourth that how good and far were we with the data. Rather than
absolutely. So I want to explain to my audience, you have data that the Election Commission guidelines forbids you from detailing in the public, because there's still one more phase of voting left, and data is not supposed to influence people's voting choices. That's the reason you can't refer to it. But मोटा मोटा सवाल है कि election turn हुई है या नहीं हुई. Let's, has something changed? If something has changed, what is that something? Have narratives changed? ठीक है, 400 पार was a psychological slogan. I think you said that from the beginning. So, and 272 is all it takes to form the government. But a government formed at 272 arguably is different from a government formed at 303, arguably is different from a government formed with 330. So my question to you is this: has something shifted, or is this a media cliche?
Well, something has shifted from the perspective that I could not sense the heat of the election as such on the roads in that way. Now, that could also be a running commentary on how India as a country and democracy has progressed, Barkha, because these days all of us are reading and expressing ourselves on social media and WhatsApp and everything. So there is no need, as such, for people to come out on the streets, and the mode of communications have shifted. So basically, this election tells me that India's democracy has taken a turn in terms of campaign, where the traditional forms of campaign have kind of gone for good. Even the rallies that we talk about, इतने की हो गई और उतने की हो गई.
Can you explain that the traditional forms of campaigning
I
are going to
think
be
the
obsolete?
door-to-door campaign, Barkha, which was the old form, Jhanda and
Ah,
all the banners and all that, where people used to go out, look at those visuals of Jhanda tanga hai, banner laga hai, poster
hmm.
laga hai, those visual forms of communication, those are the old form of communication that are gone. Because now the same Jhanda, same banner, same thing is coming here on my screen for all the parties. So this has become my new graffiti wall, where 24/7 I am being campaigned, I have been persuaded by different WhatsApp group. Friends are fighting with each other, arguing with each other, and I'm listening to them. I am just reading, "Aaj kisne kisko गरिया दिया," and even and we have got a zillion groups, right from the school KG or first के जो friends थे, उनसे लेकर के अभी तक के colleagues and the agony aunts and the घर के group and all that kind of group. So these are the best thing is everybody right now in India, everybody is a psephologist simply because he has that empirical data. Barkha, on a serious note, everybody is going through what is happening in the different WhatsApp groups, and everybody filters that information, most of them, as per their own line of affinity, argument, and this way and that way. So there are huge data points, campaigning points on handsets of a billion odd people out there. Now, obviously, they are so absorbed with that one, they do not even have time to look at the poster, jhanda, banner, blah 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 blah. They just don't have the time in that way. Now, the traditional form of the rallies, that is also, I guess, this is probably the one of the last few stages where you are still gonna see physical presence of the people on the ground. Because Barkha, since 2014, we are witnessing another trend. Rallies are being televised. So rally is not just a rally for those thousands of people on the ground, but they are for a billion odd population when it is televised. This is why what leaders say in the rally, the content has changed. Earlier, the rally content used to be hyper local. कि हम हाजीपुर में जाएंगे तो हम हाजीपुर की बात करेंगे, बेगूसराय जाएंगे तो but now they know I am standing in Hajipur, but my rally is being beamed and somebody in Kerala is also watching it. So the content will be addressing all sort of audience wherever they are. So that form has changed, and that is a remarkable change in that way, because for many reasons we still have to scientifically investigate what has been the impact as such in terms of the, understanding of democracy and people's participation. So that is the biggest change that I witnessed right now. On
But
the
talking,
turnout thing,
yeah,
yeah.
No, go ahead. You
No,
complete
I mean,
first.
otherwise, other than that, honestly speaking, I don't consider much has changed, because as on the turnout, I said, the final figures are more or less on the lines where they were supposed to be. The drop and swing and upswing of the turnout were on the expected lines, which we have been saying in the trackers, that which are the lopsided and which are the good contest states, and that turnout and down turnout thing is holding true. I don't see much that has changed in that perspective. I don't see any warning signs. I don't see any red flags.
So you don't feel any political tectonic shifts.
Honestly speaking, I don't sense that, because अगर वो होता है बरखा, तो टेक्टोनिक शिफ्ट आपको दिखता है. Now you have traveled from Kanyakumari to Kashmir and back.
Yeah.
If there was that tectonic shift, Barkha, it would have reflected you on the ground. If when you were talking to people,
Yeah.
you would have found people extremely agitated, hyper, or extremely excited, extremely bullish. So now either neither you have found people to be extremely agitated and angry, nor you have found people to be extremely happy and gung-ho about the things. So people are likely, जिसे जिसे कहते हैं ना, गुनगुने. It's lukewarm, if I may say so. But when you talk to them, they answer. And you also realize that I don't see much of a gray area, Barkha. That's a funny thing in my data as well. I realize when I go through the data, people talk with much clarity. They have their reasons, and voting is not a one issue decision, Barkha. Always remember, all of us, voting is actually a cumulative decision. People have multiple layers of reasonings. When they finally get down to that thing, I will go for that. Because we have a tendency to analyze people mandate in a oversimplistic way कि पुलवामा हो गया और वो हो गया
जी जी
और स्ट्राइक हो गई तो हो गया, अयोध्या मंदिर बन गया तो हो गया. It never works actually. It's a cumulative decision and people are very clear in their decision why and where they voted, and this is why the number of people who are deciding in the very last, that
yeah.
number is shrinking. That number is shrinking.
That's very interesting. And I agree with you that my travels bear this out, that there's no upsurge of emotion. There is no downturn of emotion. There is a, आपने गुनगुना word use किया. It's a very accurate word. बड़ा quiet, एक बड़ा quiet सा articulation है. चुपचाप से उनको जो कहना है वो कह देते हैं. But आपने hyper local versus national की बात की. The opposition has been wanting to localize the election and make it less about Modi and more about us area mein kya issues hai, right? I'm going to play out a clip of Rahul Gandhi and Akhilesh. We should spend some time talking about UP and also this attempt at localization. Take a look.
भाई और बहनों, जीत निश्चित है. यहां पे मैं बता रहा हूं, लिख लो, यहां पे क्लीन स्वीप होने जा रही है गठबंधन की, इंडिया गठबंधन की. लाइन लगने वाली है सीटों की, टकाटक 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 टकाटक. और उसके बाद गुड बाय बीजेपी, गुड बाय नरेंद्र मोदी, टाटा.
Goodbye BJP, Tata Prime Minister can be seen again, like I said with the Prime Minister, as a political comment? Or is there actually a spring in the step of the opposition where their calculations could be telling them something that you might be privy to and you can't share? I'm certainly not privy to. But if you look at it through the framework of localization versus national, is this a national election? Is this a series of local elections? How do you see it?
So far, I see it as a nationalized election with the aberration of the localization in many places now. With the opposition has successfully converted them into a localized elections. But those localization of the elections, that Barkha has happened largely on the ground of a wrong ticket distribution by the BJP. Wherever the BJP's, there was a chink in the armor that, okay, उनका आदमी कोई नाराज हो गया, कोई रेबल खड़ा हो गया, किसी बड़े का टिकट काट दिया, गलत इक्वेशन वाले को टिकट दे दिया, आउटसाइडर को टिकट दे दिया, इंपोर्टेड को टिकट दे दिया. Wherever those kind of things have happened, opposition has tried to make it localized there because of these issues. So yes, full marks to them to at least try to make them localized. Full marks to them actually converting those seats into localized election. But when I say these things have happened, I am not saying it that is happening as a generalized trend. Because if you look into the media reports, and I've been reading a lot, I mean, all my reporter friends, whatsoever they are fielding from the ground, the seats, say for example, in Rajasthan, there are 5 seats where there is perceived to be a very good contest. The turnout is very healthy and there are extremely important localized equations. कहीं कुछ नाराज है, कहीं कुछ नाराज है, कोई पुराने का कटा, and all those things that happen. Similarly, there are few seats, three seats in Madhya Pradesh, 2 seats in Delhi, or for example, significant number of now seats, about 15 to 20 seats in UP, for example, where the localized equations have become important, critical, and they have become very important because of wrong selection or continuation by the BJP of a non-performing member of parliament, which is kind of odd because BJP has been very good in chopping off the tickets of the non-performing MPs, but still that has happened. Now, 2 things are important to understand here. Number one, whether that localization of the election is big enough to cause trouble to the BJP, or whether BJP can, or Prime Minister Modi can, by his personal sway, whitewash that entire localization and once again tie back on that thing. However, one thing which I want to underline again here, the aberration or localization are not a generic phenomena, not a generalization. Aberrations remain aberrations. And the number of the aberration seats where the opposition is making inroads or giving a good contest in really strong BJP strongholds are as good as the aberration seats of the where BJP has been a big zero and they are trying to make an inroad. So Rajasthan's 5 seats aberrations are as good as BJP's 3 seats aberration in Tamil Nadu or 3 seats aberrations in Kerala for that matter. So yes, when you count them in from the turnout perspective, again I'm saying, and the local reports that I have been referring to you, if there are 25 to 30 aberration seats coming up for the opposition, then there are 25 to 30 aberration seats which are opening up for the BJP in the greenfield states. So again, the sum zero is sum total is zero. This is why when I said that it looks like a zero wave election, because the tide came, the tide doesn't seem like going back. I don't sense that kind of anger or apathy that the people either sit at home like 2004, that has not happened, or people are on the ground agitated, taking marches, going all out, in that way, for or against this way, just like you said, there is neither hyper excitement nor hyper pessimism. People are just, what shall I say, gunguna to Hindi shabd ho gaya, but people are stable. They say their things quietly, but there is also a very significant number of people. When you talk, you realize they are kind of predetermined. They are kind of pre-decided what they want.
Would that mean that very few people would actually change their political positions?
Exactly. And this is happening in anti-BJP and pro-BJP both ways. Now.
So who decides the election then? Or what decides the election?
Organizations decides the election, because in a good contest or the low turnout contest, eventually it will also become very important for us to see who is more keen and who has a better hunger for victory and who is more driven by the fact that I have to use my organization, pull the people, my supporters out of their home and put them into the line. That is where the keener contest elections are going to be decided.
But इस बारी ये भी बहुत बात हुई है about despondent RSS workers, the anxiety over the import of outsiders.
Yeah.
You know, the BJP has had to struggle with some of those battles for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and these are the loose ends of the BJP, which the opposition has been exposing and successfully making a significant number of seats as a battleground seats. So that is something which the opposition has played well. Only thing from that side of the theory where I am a bit reserved on calling that is they have decided to localize the election after almost about 5 years of centralizing the election in their campaign and narrative. So you mean
they made it about Modi? The opposition made it about Modi for 5 years, and now they want to localize it.
So in the last 3 months, so it's like 4 year and 8 months we remained centralized, and in the last 4 months we decided to make it localized. Now, whether it is too late, whether it is too late a realization, whether it is too late to execute, whether it is too late to damage the BJP to the extent they wish to damage, that is something which we will know only when we have the numbers and we have the actual results. Honestly, not even numbers. Even in the numbers, some states, not everybody would be clear ki kya hua. Some states will always defy the polling numbers in that way. So we will have to even wait for the actual results. Where did they come in? So I mean, from that perspective, I think they waited way too long to localize it. And Prime Minister is trying his very best to centralize it. obviously. I mean, this election is about him. People have voted for 14 and 19 for him. People are voting either in his favor or against him. So he is the central theme.
Yeah, but Neerja Chaudhary had a very interesting line, and she said ki आक्रोश तो बिल्कुल नहीं है, which I agree with, you and I agree with. She said, लेकिन what about Ankush? You see, the Indian voter doesn't like unbridled power. वो कहते हैं कि हम आपको वोट देंगे, लेकिन आपकी ये बातें अच्छी है, ये बात थोड़ा चेंज कर लीजिए. Now the opposition is counting on that kind of incremental decline in the hope that the BJP may fall below majority. What do you say about this thinking? Is it wishful thinking? Is there some math to it?
No, I think it is more of a wishful thinking. Again, I am saying that this is not a proactive approach. They are wishing for something कि संघ वाले नाराज हो जाए ना निकले, बीजेपी के लोग नाराज हो जाए ना निकले, अंकुश लगा दे ना निकले. अरविंद केजरीवाल also had a one-liner कि ये योगी को नहीं बनने देंगे. So basically, you are trying to do something which is like looking out for the things कि ये इनके हिसाब से. But this is not a proactive approach. What I'm saying, proactive approach is like when you have a significantly popular, bullish leader, aggressive leader, takes it heads on, Now, Rahul Gandhi ji takes it heads on, no doubt, aggressive, but he is not popular. So, some popular, aggressive, taking a heads on. These are the three things. So, two things, he is the checklist one, okay. But he, as far as the masses are considered, all the numbers, not just mind tracker and everything, we have seen his numbers with Modi, Rahul Gandhi and Modi are 1:2. I mean, there is no competition as such on that ground. So something hits me there that, okay, a lot might seem to be changing, or a lot, the more things change, they remain the same. So these are the things that we have to battle and grapple through in the data.
Before we start closing, Yashwant, my producers brought this slide up on the women voter turnout, and this is important because the women voters have often been called the X factor. You've also been speaking about how they're going to play a big role. This shows a kind of dip in. We've just picked up a handful of constituencies in Uttar Pradesh. Do you read any pattern here?
I read a pattern of good seats where the contest is gonna be good in that way. I mean, but why? Because if female voters have gone down, which have been voting on the Labharti Yojana, if you see it that way, then it is an interesting trend to observe. Number one. Number two, this drop in the turnout in percentage point, if that is like out of 5 lakhs or 4.5 lakhs, almost about 50,000 approximately, that's a 10% drop. If you look into that number, if that way. And that is also the kind of number that the new voters come. So I'm even keener to understand, we know for sure that the new voter registration has dropped from the Election Commission's data. New voters turnout, has it that dropped or not, that we will know only from the exit poll data and the actual the turnout, because Election Commission doesn't release the age group wise turnout data right now. So I am also anticipating not only the new voters have registered less, but probably they have gone out less as well. That might be a cause of concern for multiple reasons. I mean, not just because of the joblessness or lack of hope. It could also have a lot to do because when the registration number came out, Barkha, I also realized that for this generation, voter ID card is not the default identity card anymore. For our generation, throughout the 90s, voter ID card used to be our default identity card. 18 साल हुए नहीं कि पहले वो बनाओ, because all the doors used to open up only with that identity card. Now this generation is not very keen on that because they have Aadhaar, they have other forms of identifications, and voter ID card is no more the default identity. So that is one reason for the drop in registration, and whether that drop in registration itself has resulted in the drop in the turnout as well, further, or the lesser number of voters, that remains to be seen. But I hope that overall the female turnout is better than the last time and at par with the males. Of course, these are the few seats you asked me to look into it and see
Yeah.
how what to make out of this. I can tell you that the contest is quite keen, very keen on these seats, and the female voters, if they are the Labharti Yojana voters who are sitting at home, then it is becoming much more keener. But if they are the first time voters which are sitting at home, then it is a different story. But
Very
I hope this
interesting.
is not a generalized,
I hope so.
thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, I hope so. Let's end by saying by asking you. You said no dramatic tectonic shifts. None of us who've been on the ground have witnessed those. That would. You've also spoke about predetermined elections and predetermined political choices. That would point largely to a status quoist trend. I know you can't share data, but let me ask you a different way. Are we looking for any major surprises left to unfold at the end of the final phase? Or is
Going
this
by the
seeming
turnout, I don't.
predictable election?
Going by the turnout, there would be surprises, and few of the seats could be because of the turnout has become unpredictable there. So that is something which the turnout tells me that this might be a bit more keener and bit more better contest in that way. What remains to be seen is that if the drop in the turnout is one-sided, when I say one-sided,
ये
that
एक ही तरफ की सीट्स में टर्नआउट ड्रॉप हो रहा है.
हाँ, तो पता लगा कि जो जीत रहे हैं वो गए नहीं, उन्हीं का ड्रॉप हुआ तो वो सीट फंस गई.
What do you mean? Explain that.
Like
Explain
that, those who are saying that, okay, we are winning this seat, there is no need to go out, and there is a 7-8% drop in the turnout.
That's right.
And their winning margin has been 7-8% last time. Complacency sets in, and that is where the degree of unpredictability comes in. But the other side is also true that, in our last tracker, when we published it, we discussed this thing a couple of times. We do also ask, on the turnout factors, on a 0 to 10 scale, how likely you are, how certain you are definitely going out to vote. So 7 and onward is like we generally find approximately 66-67%, which we felt that, okay, there is a likely to be, on the lower side, it was 5 and below, it was like 61%, 62%. On the 9 and 10, it is only, it's about reverse scale, it was about about 71%. So basically the worst case scenario was 62% turnout and the best case scenario was 71%. And our expectation was 67%. By and large, it is going in the same direction, approximately all India 67% turnout. One interesting thing which I mentioned it earlier as well, that the number between the opposition and the BJP voters was 67 and 63. No, sorry, 68 and 63, if I'm not wrong. Something like that, where there was a 5-point gap between the surety of the voting. That 67, 68 out of 100 BJP supporters were saying, I am absolutely dead sure I'm going to vote. And 63 out of opposition 100 voters were saying, I am dead sure that I'm going to vote. So there is a 5% gap of the relative turnout figure. That was in the trackers earlier. If that is happening, then it's a different story. But if that 5% is like goes into complacency, and that is where the degree of uncertainty comes in, Barkha, because we then don't know कि किसका आदमी निकला किसका नहीं निकला, because बूथ या उसके ऊपर एंथुजियाज्म तो दिखता नहीं. पहले तो एंथुजियाज्म दिखता था ना, आपको लोग बूथ के ऊपर नारे लगाते हुए दिखते थे, पता लग जाता था. व्हेन यू गो आउटसाइड द बूथ, लोग जो लाइन में लगे हैं उन्हीं को देख के पता लग जाता था वोट यहाँ पे किसका पड़ रहा है. दैट यूज्ड टू बी केस. अब लोग चुपचाप खड़े होकर लाइन में जाते हैं. अच्छा, सिस्टम हैज मच मोर स्ट्रीमलाइन. So I don't think that there are reports of 2-3 hours of wait outside the polling booth. लोग जाते हैं, नॉर्मली कहते हैं आधे घंटे 45 मिनट में पूरा प्रोसेस करके हम आ गए. How to read? कौन गया कौन नहीं गया? So That's
But
it.
with all these ifs, where you were in your reading of the election when the campaign started and where you are today, is it different or is it largely the same?
I think I don't have any red flags. I mean, we are looking at the red flags, what we can read. Is it something different? Is it something different?
Yes.
Obviously, there are many things which go up from the expectation, many things which go down from the expectation, that net result becomes zero in that. But so far from the turnout and all the reports that I have been reading and everywhere been reporting in all the newspapers, I don't think there is any red flag of something that, okay, this is like a huge upset or something which is coming in. So, I mean, from that perspective, I think the turnout is the best indicator of sorts. अच्छा ये भी नहीं होता बरका बाय द वे, बड़ा रेयर ऐसा होता है दैट मर्फीज प्रिंसिपल लग जाए, like किसी पार्टी के लिए. Like in 2004, it was rare case. Whatever could go wrong for the BJP went wrong. From the alliance to the turnout to campaigning to the messaging, and everything went wrong. And then we have seen the other extreme of 2014. Whatever could go wrong for the Congress went wrong in that way. Yeah, yeah, I mean, generally what happens that probability के पर्सपेक्टिव पे दोनों चीजें बराबरी में जाती हैं. जो क्लोज सीट्स भी होती हैं बरका ना, वो in probability they get distributed in the same proportion of as the vote share in that way. जिसको जितना वोट मिल रहा है उसके प्रोपोर्शन में वो क्लोज सीट्स भी मोर और लेस. आप किसी भी सिपोलरिस्ट से पूछेंगे, आप चाहे संजय भाई से बात कर लीजिए, राजीव करंदीकर से बात कर लीजिए, किसी से बात कर लीजिए, आपको यही वो बताएंगे कि यार प्रोपोर्शन वो मेंटेन होता है क्लोज सीट्स में. लेकिन सब कुछ एक तरफ हो जाए, सब कुछ एक तरफ हो जाए, ये थोड़ा सा कम माना जाता है, रेयर कि सब कुछ होगा एक ही तरफ हो जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं.
चलिए, अब तो कुछ ही दिन बाकी हैं. We'll end where we started with 3 cheers for Kashmir and the turnout there. And Yashwant, thank you. We can talk to you for hours, but we have to let you do some other work also. And just as I said, we're in the last mile, literally now in the last mile. And I think people can't wait for this to be over and for the country to know who is their next government. Has Yashwant gone? I just wanted to say thank you to him if he's still there. There he is. Thank you, Yashwant. It's such a pleasure, and see you soon. See you soon. Thank you. And that brings us to the close of another edition of the Dhabas of Democracy. As we said, we have completed our road trip from Kanyakumari to Kashmir. We thank you for being part of this journey. In the next few days, we will continue to bring you special broadcasts looking ahead at the last phase of voting as well as election counting. And we hope you'll join us for both of those big news stories. Thank you for tuning in, and see you tomorrow. We're at the Indian mainland's southernmost tip in Kanyakumari, the confluence of the Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. It is from here that we're beginning our big road trip to the heart and the soul of India, Dhabas of Democracy. That's all about traveling thousands of kilometers to look at the food, the fun, the festivity, the flavors of this election, but also, of course, to tell the stories of you the people, of we the people. At Mojo Story, we have always gone to where the story is. It could be the battlefields of Israel and Gaza, it could be the conflict zone of Manipur, or it could be the sorrow and the tragedy of COVID. We think of all of you as members of our community, of our family. So, I'm urging you and requesting you today to help us tell your stories and our stories. So do become a Mojo member. Support and power our storytelling, but also get first access to our big interviews, our special ground reports, our town halls, and also have the opportunity to ask our newsmakers questions directly, as well as get published on our platform. Become a Mojo member, click on the link below, and see you soon.